Here on the Intersection Podcast, I am Michael Popok. It's an intersection that is congested at times and certainly dangerous, that intersection of law and politics. And it's one that doesn't sleep, and therefore I can't either. It doesn't take a vacation, and I can't either, even though I'm traveling with my family. I'm glad we're all here together on the Midas Touch Network, where independent journalism and commentary lives. And together, we will overcome this Trump administration. All eyes are on the confirmation process surrounding Todd Blanche, who would be the most unqualified and corrupt attorney general in history if confirmed by the full Senate. Thursday, there's a hearing to confirm him at the Senate Judiciary Committee level. We're presuming that there will be a person filling in for Lindsey Graham at that time, and therefore it'll be 12 Republicans against 10 Democrats. Even if Senator Cornyn of Texas does what many people think he's going to do and vote against Todd Blanche as his swan song as he leaves the Senate, that still means that Blanche squeaks through the committee by one vote to go to the Senate floor sometime in a week. But is his candidacy assured? Former federal judges, 35 of them, joined together and were able to obtain at the end of May a decision by Judge Williams in Miami, my normal home backyard, in which she declared that the phony lawsuit Donald Trump started against his own Internal Revenue Service as a pretext to create a fraudulent, illegal slush fund of a couple of $1 billion to give money to Jan 6th protesters who attacked the Capitol and attacked our police. And more importantly, to Donald Trump to set up a super pardon for not only himself, for his affiliates and his family, to protect him from tax exposure, tax liability, something he probably values at worth billions of dollars. That was at the core of a ruling by Judge Williams that was brought by 35 former federal judges, including Judge Gertner, Judge Ludig, and Judge Wolf. And they just shocked many people, but not those that follow legal AF closely, because the judge, after issuing her ruling, declaring as a farce the creation of the fund, the settlement itself, Todd Blanche's attempted use of his powers as attorney general to create this fund and this super pardon, and said they were illegitimate, that the court was being used to give a veneer of legitimacy to something that was illegitimate. She then awarded as a sanction that those former federal judges are entitled to their attorney's fees for the couple of briefs they filed and for bringing the motion, something that was probably worth a couple of $100,000. But they rose above partisan politics and they said, you know what? We know this money's coming from the taxpayer. We're more interested in protecting the rule of law, protecting justice, and protecting the Constitution than we are about getting a couple of shekels back in our bank account to pay for our attorney's fees. And one of the judges that was involved in that decision is Judge Mark Wolf, former senior federal judge on the bench for more than 35 years up in Boston, formerly a senior member of the Department of Justice. And Judge Wolf joins me in the second half of tonight's Intersection podcast for an exclusive briefing about why we should stand opposed to Donald Trump and to Todd Blanche, his pick. And this from somebody who was a Republican appointed judge, appointed by Ronald Reagan. He stepped off the bench in order to continue to fight for our democracy and the rule of law, and famously resigned. And you're going to want to hear from Judge Wolf towards the middle of this particular podcast tonight, The Intersection. But I compliment the former federal judges for telling Judge Williams, we'll just take $4,600, Judge. That was the cost of some of our lawyers being admitted to the bar here because some of them were not members of the Southern District of Florida. It cost $250 a head, and there were 18 lawyers that wanted to argue this case and wrote the briefs and helped write the briefs, led by Matt Platkin, the former New Jersey Democratic Attorney General, and others. And they said, we just need that in the copying cost, Judge, because they know the money's coming out of the taxpayer. dole. It's not coming out of the pocket of Todd Blanche, but this is another stick in the eye of Todd Blanche and Donald Trump, where former federal judges rise above partisan politics and say, we're just here to protect the rule of law. We're just here as constitutionalists. We're just here because we believe in the separation of powers. And you don't have to pay us for our trouble. I don't want to say Todd Blanche is in a lot of trouble. I think he squeaks by with Tom Tillis voting in his favor. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that's going to happen. And it'll be like a 11. Well, right now it's 12-10 for the Republican advantage. If Cornyn slides over, it'll just barely pass by 1. Tillis has said he wants to see the Jan 6 fund ended entirely, but he already said he was satisfied with how Todd Blanche met with the Epstein survivors. You know who's not satisfied? The Epstein survivors. I interviewed many of them, including Danny Bensky. She said quite clearly it was a disgusting affair. It was one where she felt insulted. She felt victimized again. She was in tears over it, brought back all of her trauma. To have a Department of Justice head, person who wants to lead the Attorney General office, look them in the eye and basically throw up his shoulders and say, I'm not going to do justice. I'm not going to defend you. I'm not going to investigate the crimes against you, for sex crimes against you, because I work for President Trump. I mean, that's effectively what happened. And so Tillis saying, I think that meeting went well. The fix has always been in. Look, 3 weeks ago, we had Cory Booker, Senator Booker, senior senator for New Jersey, on here on The Intersection. And he testified with us and to our community that he thinks the fix is in. He saw Tillis catch the eye of Todd Blanche on the way in. They both smiled and nodded. You know, that's like the sting. So all this BS we're hearing from Tom Tillis, I think he ultimately sides with Blanche. Then the fight becomes a fight on the Senate floor to try to find 3 or 4 votes to peel away from those that vote. We don't have to get all of them. Just force a couple of Republicans to stay home. Force a couple of Republicans, embarrass them into voting against Todd Blanche. And Todd Blanche gets knocked and locked and blocked. I don't know who's going to be. The problem with blocking Todd Blanche, just so we don't blow smoke or sunshine here on The Intersection, is somebody could be worse than him, just as he's worse than Pam Bondi in his own way. I mean, if he gets blocked, Harmeet Dillon, the head of the Civil Rights Division, she's worse. She's a political hack of the first order. All she wants to do is bootlick Donald Trump. She's sued against the Voting Rights Act. She goes after civil rights groups. She weaponized the once proud Civil Rights Division. She's been campaigning and lobbying for that position since day one, when she didn't get the head of the Republican National Committee. Harmeet Dillon is probably worse. If that can, I mean, listen, we're picking among a terrible selection process here, right? A terrible group, but she could be worse. It's not my vote for Todd Blanche. I think everybody who's obscenely unqualified needs to be blocked. But I want to also tell you that if we think that by blocking Blanche successfully, and that's going to lead Donald Trump to pick somebody who's honorable, who's independent, who's a moderate, who appeals to all voters, forget it. It'll be another political hack. It may not even be a lawyer. I'm going to talk about Bill Pulte, the part-time head of the National Intelligence Community, with zero intelligence. I mean that literally, with zero intelligence experience. After he got busy shredding the Freddie Mae and Fannie Mac mortgage liquidity and regulating entities, he's the part-time head of the director of national intelligence, and he's busy firing people that makes us insecure. Bill Pulte, he fits the bill for somebody that Donald Trump would want. Somebody who just follows whatever Donald Trump tells him to do, so that Donald Trump is effectively his own head of the Department of Justice. I mean, frankly, there's nothing in the Constitution that says Donald Trump couldn't be his own attorney general. Could you imagine that? Donald Trump as his own attorney general. Wow. So there's a lot of ways to help block Todd Blanche. Firstly, you can phone your senator. We'll put the number up on the screen. This is the number. We'll leave it up there. This is the number to block Todd Blanche by calling your senator. That's the Senate. That's the Senate switchboard. Ask for your senator because we got to start lobbying them hard. Call every day and make a pest of yourself. Focus on the Senate. This is out of the House's hands. And we'll continue to platform organizations as we have and leaders like we have here on Legal AF up until the very moment of the vote. It's that important to our rule of law, to our Constitution, to our separation of powers. What we're watching so far is what used to be called when a president came into office, his cabinet of the best and the brightest. That's what it was called when JFK came into office. This isn't the best and the brightest. This is the worst and most corrupt cabinet in history. Each one of them corrupted. Each one of them captured by Donald Trump. Each one of them benefiting in some way financially. We just got new reporting that probably explains why Donald Trump was so involved and so interested in the World Cup being a success in the United States and so interested in having FIFA make all that money on the backs of American taxpayers. The American cities paid for all the expenses and FIFA took all the profit. Can you imagine being in business? It's a great business model if you can find it. You have your partner pay all the expenses and you keep all the gross revenue. Pretty good deal if you can find it. Couldn't understand why FIFA and Gianni Infantino, its head, was so interested in currying favor with Donald Trump. Giving him a World Cup, letting him hand out the World Cup, praising him, crossing over the strict partisan and independent lines that are in effect for sport. Why? I think we have our answer. There's new reporting that Gianni Infantino is trying to sell a $20 billion private equity stake in FIFA for FIFA to collect. And guess who's going to be part of the buying or ownership group? Jared Kushner, son-in-law in chief, Donald Trump's son-in-law, which means the Trump family. The Trump family is going to have a $20 billion stake in FIFA at this rate. FIFA who aren't supportive of Gianni Infantino are up in arms. Oh, it's not his to sell. How can he sell it? Oh, I'm sure buried somewhere in your constitution or bylaws after you gave lifetime appointment effectively to Infantino is a provision that says he can take in investments. And now we know why. Rudy Giuliani's son, Andrew Giuliani, was the head of the World Cup committee. Now we know why Trump was so busy trying to pump up the dollars and the profit to line the pocket of Infantino, because we were watching a bribe. Because in return, Infantino is going to benefit the Trump family by cutting them into a once-in-a-lifetime deal to get into FIFA. You and I aren't going to be able to buy in. It's going to be the Trump family. And again, this is something that should be another impeachable offense against Donald Trump as he continues to make hundreds of billions of dollars inside and outside the government on our dime, on our taxpayer dollar. When people sit around and say, how come the policies that Donald Trump is interested in or tries to pass or shove down our throat, why are those policies, especially the economics one, seem to be inconsistent with our own personal pocketbooks and wallets? Why is that? Because he doesn't care about your affordability, my affordability. He cares about how much profit, how much lucre he can line his pocket with and that of his family and those around him and benefit them in terms of his policies. So he distorts and corrupts and warps our U.S. policy, turns it towards cryptocurrency, turns it towards government contracts held by all of his cronies like Elon Musk and thousands of others you've never heard of. It has nothing to do with doing right by the American people. And that's why we see the new polling that places Donald Trump among the worst presidencies at the almost 600-day mark we've ever seen. Now, I've seen the polling. Some polling says that Democrats are up 11 points for a House, generic Democrat versus generic Republican. I've seen that vote percentage as low as 3%. And it has to be about, popular vote-wise, about 3.1% for the Democrats to ultimately, seat by seat, take the House. That's what Nate Silver tells us, one of those bean counters this time that works for the New York Times. I think we could do it, but we can do it because we join together in a community here on Midas, on Legal AF, and on The Intersection. And we talk through the issues, and we don't blow smoke or sunshine. And I give you what you need based on my own honest commentary, independent journalism, not corrupted by outside influence, not corrupted by outside ownership at all, right? I give it to you so that you can have that debate in the public square of ideas. You can debate it on social media. You can debate it around your kitchen table. You can debate it with your friends and family, or soon not to be your friends and family, depending upon how that debate goes on. That's why we join together here on Tuesday night, on Wednesdays and Saturdays for the Legal AF podcast, over on the Legal AF YouTube channel. These are all the ways when people say, how do we support what you do? Everything I just listed costs you nothing, but it's so dear to us, is so important to us, right? Free membership and subscription on Legal AF YouTube channel, where we do 10 to 12 fresh videos every day that I lead and I curate. Over on the Legal AF Substack, where I and our other contributors do original writing, live reporting, and give you all the filings, all the orders that we talked about, all that source material, end up over in Legal AF Substack. Join today. Help us to get to the top 10 in law and politics on Substack. Again, for free. So we got the YouTube channel, we've got the Substack, and then as people may know, I created a law firm after 35 years in the law profession, and using my reputation for honesty and as a diligent and zealous fighter, I created a law firm dedicated to our Midas Touch, Legal AF, and Intersection audience. It's called, what else? The Popok Firm. There's a QR code up there. You can go to the popokfirm.com, brand new website, lays it out for you. If you've been injured in an accident, or anybody in your family, catastrophic injuries, hopefully not, but up to death, and you need recovery, you need justice, call the Popok Firm, have your case evaluated. If we take the case, you don't pay a dime unless we recover. And I'm glad that you're here with us. When we come back from our first break, I'm going to have with us Mark Wolf, former federal judge who purposely and purposefully resigned as a federal judge when he couldn't take it anymore. And he decided, I got to speak out against the corrupt Department of Justice and a corrupt administration, the attack on the rule of law. I can't do it in a black robe. I got to do it as Citizen Wolf. And boy, is he prepared to make the case against Todd Blanche with an exclusive interview that's coming up next. We've got sponsors, all because of you. The Intersection sponsors are important because they are the gas in the tank, along with your membership and viewership. So, well, they've been selected by Jordy, Mycelis, and me, specially curated for our audience. And here's a break. If you have a cat like we do, you know they're picky. Chanel turns her nose up at just about everything, except Smalls. Since switching, I've noticed more energy, a softer coat, and honestly, a much less offensive litter box. That's because Smalls Fresh Cat Food is protein-packed recipes made with preservative-free, 100% human-grade ingredients you'd find in your fridge, and it's delivered right to your door. Since switching to Smalls, I've noticed an improvement in my cat's energy, coat, and digestion. More of the nutrients are digestible, which means less junk comes out the other end. And yes, that means less, what's the word? Stinky poops. Forbes ranked Smalls the best overall cat food. BuzzFeed says, my cats went completely ballistic for this stuff. And after switching to Smalls, 88% of cat owners reported overall health improvements. Plus, you can try Smalls risk-free They'll refund you if your cat won't eat their food. So stop serving your little carnivore a bowl of processed shortcuts. For a limited time, because you're an Intersection listener, get 60% off your first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/intersection. That's 60% off your first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/intersection. As a commentator and practicing lawyer, discovery is everything. But there's a form of discovery happening to you every day that you never consented to. Right now, your personal records, home address, phone number, and even relatives' names are being discovered, packaged, and sold by an unregulated industry of data brokers. This isn't just about privacy, it's about security. This data is the primary fuel for the identity theft and sophisticated scams we see dominating the headlines. That's why I've partnered with Incogni. Think of Incogni as your personal privacy advocate. Instead of you spending dozens of hours navigating the labyrinth opt-out processes that these brokers intentionally make difficult, Incogni handles the legal work of demanding your information be removed. They initiate the request and follow up to ensure those brokers actually comply with the law. What really sets them apart is their unlimited plan, which features custom removals. This is for those hard to scrub sites that fall outside the standard lists, like old news portals, random blogs, or sketchy directories. If you find your info somewhere it shouldn't be, you simply send Incogni the link. Their team of privacy experts then handles the manual takedown for you, start to finish. Look, I've used this service myself, and the continuous monitoring in the background is the only way to ensure that once your data is gone, it stays gone. Take control of your personal data risk-free for 30 days. Go to incogni.com/truth and use code TRUTH to get 60% off an annual plan. It's time to take your data off the market before it's used against you with code TRUTH at incogni.com/truth to reclaim your privacy today. A lot of people hear about GLP-1 medications and assume they're out of reach because of the cost, so they never even look into treatment. But there may be more affordable options than people realize. Roe helps eligible patients find the lowest cost path to FDA-approved GLP-1 treatment, whether that's through insurance coverage or lower cost cash pay options. Roe's free insurance checker lets you see which GLP-1 medications are covered by your insurance and whether a prior authorization may be required. You don't have to be a Roe member to receive your coverage support. And if insurance doesn't cover treatment or you don't have insurance to check, Roe also offers lower cost FDA-approved cash pay options, including GLP-1 pills. Before being prescribed medication, patients must complete an online medical visit lab test if needed and qualify for medication based on their BMI, lab results, medical history, and the discretion of a Roe-affiliated healthcare provider. One thing I really appreciate is that Roe makes it simple to see what's covered before making a decision. Go to ro.co/intersection to see if you qualify. That's ro.co/intersection to get started on Roe. Go to ro.co/safety. That's ro.co/safety for boxed warnings and full safety information about GLP-1 medications. Welcome back to the Intersection with Michael Popok. You can tell I'm on holiday, but the rule of law protection never sleeps and doesn't take a vacation. And I can't either. Apparently, I'm in another country. The sun has gone down, but our spirits are high. And I think you're going to really appreciate my next guest. Earlier today, I interviewed former federal judge Mark Wolf. More than 40 years on the bench. He was a Ronald Reagan appointee. And he was just doing his job, protecting democracy, the rule of law in Boston, Massachusetts. Also served in the Department of Justice at the most senior levels. And he joined me because he told me offline that what keeps him up at night is the destruction of the Department of Justice. And he wants to do everything in his power to stop Todd Blanche from being confirmed as the Attorney General of the United States. I think you need to listen to what former federal judge Mark Wolf has to say. Let's go to my interview earlier today. Welcome to a special edition of Legal AF as the Block Blanche movement gains a head of steam with his committee confirmation vote scheduled for later this week, but some holdouts potentially among even Republicans. Various groups and individuals are arrayed against Todd Blanche, not as an individual, but because of what he represents in trying to take over the most corrupt Department of Justice in history and being wholly unqualified to serve in the role of an independent chief law enforcement officer of America. And one of the people whose voice needs to be heard above the partisan din is former federal judge Mark Wolf, who served in top positions in the Department of Justice for the Attorney General, including for Republican administrations, before becoming a federal judge appointed by Ronald Reagan. You'll know him because we've interviewed him before, and he decided at some point enough was enough. He could not resist the Trump administration's lawlessness from the federal bench. He wanted to leave the bench and oppose what he saw as a lawless Department of Justice, a rogue agency controlled by Donald Trump, and to do it as a citizen rather than as a federal judge, and wrote a famous piece for the Atlantic Monthly about his reason for resigning. And now he's one of the most powerful voices out there as to telling America why they need to work hard to block Todd Blanche from being confirmed as Attorney General. I have the honor and privilege of bringing on Judge Mark Wolf onto Legal AF. Hi, Judge.
Hi. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak on this vital issue of whether Todd Blanche is qualified to be Attorney General of the United States. And I really appreciate the opportunity.
You wrote, it's our honor, Your Honor. You wrote in 1992 something I want to read aloud in an op-ed piece. You wrote, an attorney general should be a person who has earned a reputation as trustworthy and professional rather than partisan, because often he or she cannot properly explain what the Department of Justice is doing or why it has failed to act. Usually a prosecutor cannot ethically acknowledge or discuss a pending investigation or explain why an indictment has not been sought. Indeed, many matters of public interest involve classified information. Thus, it is essential that the public trust the integrity and ability of the Attorney General and other officials of the Department of Justice. Does Todd Blanche fit that bill?
No. I think in the next sentence of what you just read, I said, therefore, the Attorney General should not be the president's former campaign manager. Todd Blanche is the president's former criminal defense lawyer in many cases, including cases implicated by the release in the Trump v. IRS case. And when he was questioned by Senator John N. Kennedy at his confirmation hearing about 2 weeks ago, Senator Kennedy asked, is the president your friend? And Blanche said, no, I'm his lawyer. I was his lawyer. But that's the problem. As I wrote in that piece that you just quoted, there's a difference between politics and partisanship in the administration of justice. The president's elected. He's entitled to have an attorney general who shares his views on policy issues and to give more priority to immigration enforcement than civil rights if he wants. But from that point on, there can be no partisanship in the administration of justice. It's crucial that the law be enforced without fear or favor. The Attorney General cannot take directions from the president or decide himself that there are friends or enemies, but neutral standards and procedures have to be applied. Otherwise, as the Attorney General for whom I worked, Edward Levy, said when he was sworn in by Gerald Ford after Watergate, nothing could be more damaging to the ideals that we all hold dear than not to make clear by word and deed that the law is not an instrument to be used for partisan purposes. And that's what has happened in the Department of Justice in the Trump administration, including while Todd Blanche was the Deputy Attorney General and now the Acting Attorney General, is completely contrary to that fundamental principle.
So we've watched 550 days or so of this administration. All of the ideals that you just laid out have been destroyed, been ignored. In fact, when Todd Blanche, in 441 pages of responses to the Judiciary Committee following his live testimony, he was asked, will you be, and do you believe it's important that the head of the Department of Justice be independent from the president? He said, no. He said, I see myself as no different than any other cabinet member. Why would I be independent? The Commerce Secretary is not independent. The Treasury Secretary is not independent. Why should I be? Why does this keep you up at night, Judge?
It keeps me up at night because, and it does keep me up at night, because there has to be a degree of impartiality. The Attorney General has a duty to enforce the laws, again, as I said, without fear or favor, and to zealously represent the United States in litigation, for example. And there can be a tension. I believe one of the senators properly said, I think you have the hardest job in Washington. You have to serve the president and also obey the law, enforce the law, and be guided by the Constitution. So we see, for example, the crucial harm that's caused when there is no independence of the president. President Trump sues the Internal Revenue Service. He controls the litigation. He issued an executive order saying, clarifying, codifying, in effect, that he controls all litigation and the Attorney General has to take direction from him. He sues the IRS because his tax returns were leaked. He sues them more than 4 years after the leaks. There's a 2-year statute of limitations. When other victims of a man named Littlejohn's leaks brought claims, the government zealously and persuasively argued if it was more than 2 years, they were too late. And there's also a statute that says the remedy for a violation is $1,000 for each violation, not $10 billion. But as the judge found when 35 other judges, former judges, and I asked her to reopen this case that generated the so-called weaponization fund and gave not just Trump, who was a party, but his family and his corporations immunity from tax audits and penalties, perhaps criminal penalties for tax evasion. The judge found that this case was brought for an improper collusive purpose. It wasn't a real case or controversy, but an effort to use the courts to, one, enrich President Trump and his family by immunizing them from possible tax liability, and two, to create this weaponization fund. So she found the case was for an improper purpose, and that the Attorney General, Acting Attorney General Blanche, who signed the relevant documents, had participated in that improper purpose because he wasn't zealously representing the interests of the United States by asserting these defenses or even appearing in the case, and referred him for possible sanctions by disciplinary authorities. She could have sanctioned him herself, but I think probably didn't do that because he never filed an appearance in the case. No Justice Department attorney did. Sort of further evidence of the collusion.
Yeah, and I thank you. Our audience has been following that case closely with the filing by you and 34 other federal judges. We've had Judge Ludig on before, local counsel that I know well in Miami, Andres Rivero, and we did just cover the fact that even though the judge invited the 35 former federal judges to be reimbursed and their attorneys to be reimbursed for their time, the $100,000 or more of time spent, you and the other judges said, we're not interested in the money. We're interested in justice and protecting the rule of law. Just pay us for the special admission fees and our mailing costs. And I think it was $4,600 and change, and we'll be fine, which is is another poke in the eye of Donald Trump. Where there are people in this country who are statespeople and rise above it and are not in it for the money. And you and the other judges and the lawyers certainly fit that bill. And we thank you for doing that. One question I have, as long as we're on that topic, in a footnote, the judge seems to be inviting another motion to be filed about a possible fraud on the court, citing another rule. You want to break any news? Is anybody considering filing another motion?
I'm not sufficiently up to date, and they would be privileged attorney-client communications in any event. But no, she didn't find there was a fraud on the court, but in the sense of, but she did find explicitly that the case was brought by an improper purpose. It was collusive. It was not a true case or controversies. So the courts shouldn't have been used to create this fund and as an excuse to give immunity to the Trump family as well as the president. And on that last point, Senator Cornyn, who questioned, I would say brilliantly, on the Trump versus IRS case, asked Mr. Blanche, does the release cover anybody other than a party to the case? And Mr. Blanche said no. And Senator Cornyn accurately pointed out that the release goes to individuals and organizations who weren't even parties to the case, the Trump family, the Trump corporations. So the fact that he didn't give an accurate, honest, if he knew it was inaccurate, which I assume he did, in my opinion, answer to that question, and I would say other questions about the case, is further reason to believe that he's not qualified to be Attorney General of the United States and should not be confirmed.
Let me go to another issue you and I talked in pre-production about, which demonstrates another angle of the corruption of the Department of Justice. And we lay this at the feet of Todd Blanche, just as we do Donald Trump. Pam Bondi's long gone. As you know well from your own role, the Deputy Attorney General effectively is the COO of the Attorney General office anyway, and runs the day-to-day operation. So anything we talk about in the past had to have been approved ultimately by Todd Blanche, and therefore should be another black mark or part of the rap sheet against him. And that is the dismissal by, or the pardon or clemency by Donald Trump, and then ultimately the dismissal of indictments by the Department of Justice of people who were indicted and convicted, oftentimes by jury, of fraud, whether it be in cryptocurrency or in other areas, and the wiping out of the amount of money that was clawed back to them in restitution that would come back to victims and to the American people to the tune of billions of dollars. And there's one example you raised with me about a guy named Gentile who was prosecuted in the Eastern District of New York in Brooklyn. Why don't you tell our audience about that case, and why do you think it's so important that we focus on those kind of clemency and dismissals?
That case, in my view, has not received adequate public attention. On June 21, the New York Times wrote a lengthy report citing many sources that David Gentile, if I'm pronouncing it right, was convicted in the Eastern District of New York, Brooklyn, of a massive fraud involving more than $1 billion, victimizing hundreds of thousands of people. He was sentenced to serve 10 years in prison. Reportedly, while in prison, he said to people, sources for the New York Times, that he was spending more than $2 million to get clemency and was communicating with Reverend Frank Mann about this. Frank Mann is close to the president. He's a former Catholic priest. He gave the closing benediction at the inauguration. He denies that he ever had anything to do with the clemency, but the New York Times reports that it had several sources who indicated that Mann had talked to the president about this. This is extremely serious. Senator Richard Blumenthal asked, well, I left out one important point. So after the commutation, the prosecutors in Brooklyn, who had obtained the conviction, began an investigation of the circumstances of the commutation to see whether there was any illegal conduct, including any bribes paid to anybody in connection with it. Reportedly, the Associate Deputy Attorney General, so somebody who would have been on the staff of the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche at the time, called the U.S. Attorney in Brooklyn, and the investigation was closed. This raises substantial questions about whether there's been a cover-up by the Department of Justice in which, if it occurred, Blanche would be complicit of serious misconduct and possible criminal activity. And Senator Blumenthal asked Mr. Blanche to provide information and evidence concerning the commutation. And Blanche, according to Senator Blumenthal, who eventually made a written request for this information, said, I can't disclose it. There are statutory prohibitions on disclosing evidence concerning investigations. It's the same thing he said to Senator John N. Kennedy in his confirmation hearing. Based on my almost 50 years working in the Justice Department and as a judge, that answer is not correct. The only legal restriction on disclosure of which I'm aware is Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E, which prohibits disclosure of information occurring in a grand jury. But the evidence in an investigation, even if it's later presented to a grand jury, is not subject to the restriction of Rule 6E.
Let me read for our audience in just a couple of interesting points here. One, Gentile and his partner, Jeffrey Schneider, were convicted during the Trump administration by the Department of Justice's office in the Eastern District of New York. And how do I know that? Because still up on the Department of Justice website, and we'll put it up here, is the press release from May 9th, 2025. I just want to read 2 paragraphs from it just to make the fine point of what Judge Wolf is sharing with us here. Here's the headline: Department of Justice, Trump administration, Todd Blanche, then Deputy Attorney General. David Gentile and Jeffrey Schneider defrauded thousands of individual investors in a $1.6 billion GPB capital fund scheme. Earlier today in federal court in Brooklyn, David Gentile, the founder and former chief executive officer, and Jeffrey Schneider, the former CEO of these companies, were sentenced by United States District Judge Rachel Kovner to 7 years in prison and 6 years in prison, respectively, for their role in a multi-year scheme that defrauded 10 1,000 investors by misrepresenting the performance of 3 private equity funds in which they raised $1.6 billion from investors. It was an 8-week trial in front of a jury. They were convicted of securities fraud, conspiracy, and wire fraud conspiracy. Here's the quote from, I guess is he still the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District, Joe Nocella? He said, the defendants built this company on a foundation of lies. The sentences imposed today are well-deserved and should serve as a warning to would-be fraudsters that seeking to get rich by taking advantage of investors will only get you a one-way ticket to jail. My office is committed to protecting the investing public and the integrity of the financial markets. In that case, Trump, along with the cooperation of Department of Justice's Attorney General nominee Todd Blanche, let these guys out and gave them back their money, right?
Right. And closed down, caused to be closed down, an investigation of the circumstances that could have showed that Reverend Mann was paid a lot of money and spoke to the president, or followed the money. Who knows where it went?
Let me ask you a question which will allow you to also comment on the current nominee. Let's assume the other party, or as Tom Tillis referred to them, the party with the blue jersey. Let's say they get control of the House and the Senate at the midterms, and maybe even the White House in 2028. What should they do about the Department of Justice when they're in control? And as many of the things that you're observing, are they scars that can be healed? Can it be fixed? What should the American people expect from another administration not headed by Donald Trump or people that follow him?
I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm now a citizen, and I'm not registered in any party. If the Democrats get control of one or more houses of Congress, they should subpoena all the documents relating to Gentile or Gentili. They should also subpoena all the Homan documents, because now it may be ancient history, but it's reported that in September 2024, Homan's name came up in an FBI undercover operation. They went to him. Reportedly, they gave him $50,000 cash in a kava bag, with a view to getting favorable treatment from Homan if, as foreseen, he became a key official in a Trump administration. Ordinarily, once Trump was elected and Homan became a key official in the Department of Homeland Security, the immigration czar, the FBI, I know from experience, would have gone back to Homan, probably with a bigger bag of cash, to see if they could develop additional evidence of criminal conduct by Homan and anybody else he might have been conspiring with. But the investigation was promptly closed. The White House said there was no criminal activity, no evidence of credible, there was no credible evidence of criminal activity. It's striking that the White House made the announcement, because you would have expected the president would have said, why are you asking us? Go ask the Attorney General why it was closed. And Homan said, I think initially I did nothing criminal. And then he said, I never took the cash, any cash. So there will be audio and probably video recordings of that undercover encounter. I'm familiar with them. I structured some when I was a prosecutor myself. And the video and audio will either confirm Mr. Homan's contention that he never took any money, or it will refute it. And I think that if the border czar, who's so ardently committed to getting every criminal who's in the United States out of the country, if they're here illegally, the public's got a right to know and would have a serious interest, substantial interest, in whether that person uh, appeared to be engaged in criminal activity himself. And all of this is inconsistent with our ideal of equal justice under law, where it appears that people close to the president may be protected, not investigated or prosecuted when anybody else would be, and others who are his perceived enemies get prosecuted at his direction.
Yeah. So, look, I think my other question was, do you think that the Department of Justice can, in the hands of different people who are not focused on the destruction of the rule of law and the attack on the judiciary, et cetera, do you think what we're watching can be fixed? I mean, we all agree. I think all patriots agree that the Department of Justice needs to be independent from the president, and we need to reinstall those controls and that wall. Can that be fixed? Or do the Democrats just do what the Republicans did and put in their own personal lawyers and just and then that's it? We're done. We're done with the proud history of the Department of Justice.
A major concern that I have, if Todd Blanche is confirmed, is that it will send a disturbing message and create a dangerous precedent about what qualities we should look for in the Attorney General. And it would enhance the risk that the Democrats would respond with a similarly partisan prosecutor. I don't think the Attorney General can ever be completely independent, but the Department of Justice was in disrepute after President Nixon resigned. And Attorney General Gerald Ford appointed Edward Levy, the Attorney General for whom I worked as a very young lawyer, as Attorney General to restore confidence in the department. Edward Levy had an exceptional reputation for intelligence, integrity, impartiality. He had been the president of the University of Chicago. And he, by force of his example and by his directions to the department, did a significant amount in just 2 years to restore confidence in the department and created norms that hadn't really existed before about the limited contact that the White House and the president could have with the Department of Justice. Those norms have largely endured until recently. So I do think that the appointment of a properly qualified Attorney General could help. There's a significant difference because I think if Edward Levy were to be installed as Attorney General now, he would face a challenge that he didn't face before. When he was sworn in, he said the department was fortunate to have so many highly professional men and women who knew that if we were going to have a government of laws and not men, then it would take men and women who were committed to both enforcing the law and being fair. The Department of Justice now has lost thousands of prosecutors, some fired, some who left in protest. And I think that the exceptional challenge will be to restoring the ranks of the Department of Justice as a place that's populated with people who understand the need to both zealously enforce the law and also be fair, not have friends or enemies as they administer the powerful tools that prosecutors are given.
You've made a compelling case, Judge Wolf, against Todd Blanche. Two questions to end our interview. One, I know that you've made it a cause of yours to oppose Todd Blanche's nomination. What are you doing to oppose it? And then I want to turn it to what can our audience do to help you and those groups arrayed against Todd Blanche accomplish their mission? I've asked that same question of people like the new general counsel for the NAACP, or the head of the ACLU, or Democracy Forward, or Judge Ludick. So let's break it down. What are you, give our audience confidence on the things that you're working on, and then let's figure out a way to get them involved, because without the power of public outrage, I don't think it can be accomplished.
I agree with that. Right now, I'm a private citizen. I have the great good fortune to speak not just to you, but to your audience. And I've also communicated my views to certain members of the Congress, who I won't name, but I've done that. I've participated in this litigation that generated the Trump versus IRS. I hope to have more opportunities to speak about this, but you're exactly right. Political accountability is the key. And I think members of your audience, particularly those who hopefully are Republicans or independents as well as Democrats, will communicate with members of the Judiciary Committee, and I would say especially Senator Cornyn. I know that it's said that he and Senator Tillis of North Carolina, two Republicans, are the keys, because if Blanche is not supported in the Judiciary Committee by even one of those, he won't be reported out favorably to the Senate. I'm skeptical about whether Senator Tillis, having listened to him in his interchange with Mr. Blanche, will vote against Blanche's nomination. I think that Senator Cornyn, in his brilliant, really well-informed and understood questioning of Mr. Blanche, has deep doubts about whether he should be confirmed. And it's my hope that he will have the courage of his convictions as I perceive them, under undoubtedly great pressure, probably from his colleagues as well as the White House, although the White House may not have much influence over him after supporting his opponent and costing him re-election. But it's my hope. It's my hope that Senator Cornyn will demonstrate the courage of what I perceive from his questioning to be his convictions and vote against this nomination. And hopefully a wide range of people can encourage him to do that.
Yeah, I think, frankly, when they fill that Lindsey Graham opening on the Judiciary Committee, I'm not even sure Cornyn's going to be enough, because I think they get a 12-10 advantage at that point. But certainly, as it moves to the Senate floor, though, I think the fight now is on the Senate floor to try to peel away the 3 or 4 seats that we need, including Cornyn. That would definitely move it in the right direction. And when I had the NAACP's new general counsel, Kristen Clark, formerly the head of the Civil Rights Division for the Department of Justice, she so kindly gave us the direct phone number to the Senate that people can use in order to call their senator and any other senator that they want. We're going to put it up on the screen. It's 202-224-3121. Operators in the Senate are standing by at that phone number to make your phone. And then you can also, of course, easily find the email for the office of your senator or other senators online. And I think we should start flooding the zone of protest, so that the senators know that this matters to us. The Department of Justice and the rule of law matter to us. And it's not just an esoteric concept that's debated by lawyers and former federal judges. It's one that matters to America and to our democracy.
I think you've put it more eloquently and incisively than I could. I resigned, as you know, as I explained in my Atlantic article in November 2025, because I perceive President Trump and his administration to be an existential threat to the rule of law, American democracy, and the fundamental ideal of equal justice under law. And we're very proud to say often that the United States has the longest continuous democracy in the history of the world. But that should educate all of us to understand that each of the others had failed. And we shouldn't be so arrogant or complacent to assume that ours won't fail too. And it's really going to require the active involvement, including political involvement, especially of American citizens of all ages, if this democracy that has served so many in my generation so well endures.
Former federal judge Mark Wolf served on the bench for over 30 years and made an important decision that he needed to leave the bench in order to speak out against what he saw as an assault on our rule of law by the Trump administration. I'll put a link below to the Atlantic article why he resigned. I think it's important reading. It's must reading as we gather up our forces, get that head of steam, and block Todd Blanche as Attorney General of the United States. Judge Wolf, thank you for joining us. Thank you for reaching out to us. And we'd love to have you back on as things develop in that or any other thing that keeps you up at night is going to be important to our audience.
Well, thank you very much for this exceptional opportunity and really such intelligent questions and commentary.
Welcome back. You know, I'm honored on your behalf as your diplomat to be able to interview people like former federal judge Mark Wolf, former federal judge Mike Ludig, former federal judges who have been here on our show on Legal AF YouTube channel, Stand Up for Justice, dozens of them, including current federal judges, because they, as to paraphrase Judge Ludig, they are the only ones who at this moment in time can protect our rule of law and our democracy to rise above that partisan din. I want to turn for a minute to the further corruption of the Department of Justice led by Donald Trump and Todd Blanche. I want to do it two ways, through the examination of two child sex trafficking, porno, and criminal enterprises, one Epstein, the other run by the Tate brothers, both with direct links and dotted lines back to Donald Trump, his family, the Trump administration, and those within the administration. It's hard for me to form the words to say that we have a presidency and a leader of that presidency in Donald Trump and his family who have connections to not one, but two international child sex trafficking rings. Let's start with the Epstein scandal and the cover-up of it, led by Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche had his, this is a legal term now, had his head handed to him, had his ass handed to him by senior judge Emmett Sullivan in a case brought by a dear friend of mine and fellow Midas colleague, Katie Phang. Katie Phang should get a lot of credit along with her lawyers at Public Integrity Project like Brendan Ballou. Both of them have been on the show with me because they thread the needle of a lawsuit that many people said was quixotic, that they couldn't beat the Department of Justice on this issue. They couldn't sue privately on the Epstein File Transparency Act. They didn't have a cause of action. They didn't have standing. That she couldn't sue as a journalist. She didn't have an injury. She had an injury for all of us. She had informational injury. She can't do her job as a working journalist, a day journalist, a night journalist, working like me, to report on the news, to provide honest commentary without the source material, and being spoon-fed the Epstein documents on a daily basis, where the Trump administration and his former and current criminal defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, just smugly says they've all been produced. We're not producing anymore. What documents are you talking about? I don't know. What documents do you have? And finally, after Judge Sullivan granted Katie Phang's preliminary injunction about 5 major categories of documents, the foreign language documents never produced nor translated by the Department of Justice. Think about that. This is an international child sex trafficking ring, and you ignore the foreign language documents. Secondly, the documents related to a sex torture video, the documents related to a handwritten FBI notes
about a witness who claims that when she was 13 years old, she was sexually abused by Donald Trump, and the privilege and the redaction log. There are 200,000 pages of documents that were never produced. What's in them? Must be something very scandalous and salacious for this Department of Justice to black them out. And they're supposed to create a log. Not because I say so, because the Epstein File Transparency Act, the law says so, because a federal judge ordered it. And I knew they were in trouble when they responded by attacking Katie Phang, attacking the survivors, and attacking the judge. And the judge gave him one last chance to come forward, translate the documents, provide the privilege log, and provide proof in an order to show cause as to why those documents weren't produced. And they wiped their ass with that order. That's another legal term I learned at my law school. I went to Duke, by the way. They wiped their ass with it. Took them 7 days to produce 2 pages, riddled with typos, never answered the questions, never responded to the arguments raised by Katie Phang or her lawyers. That was the last word the judge was going to give them. Then the judge came back with an order just a couple of days ago, Judge Emmett Sullivan, in which he said, I don't believe you. I don't believe your representations. The rule that we use normally for the Department of Justice is the presumption of regularity. We believe you. We believe in good faith. That was earned over 100 years of Department of Justice conduct and behavior. And it's already been squandered and shot to shit in just 540 days because federal judges don't trust the Department of Justice. So he said, oh, really? You make these representations about why you redacted things and why you haven't produced them despite my orders. Give me the proof. Provide it to me. I'll review it in camera. Give it to me in the next 2 days. And then I'll make a decision. See, some people reported that as, oh, the judge just is going to give them another chance in the next couple of days to produce documents. See, I didn't see it that way. I saw it as the beginning of the end for the Department of Justice because he's going to get their responses. He's conducting fact-finding in order to support a contempt motion that's been filed by Katie Phang. And I think the judge lowers the boom after this. I think he'll get jerked around and get the run around and get the go pound sand judge and go F yourself judge in a filing on the 30th. And then he's going to lower the boom. And I think it's going to be contempt. And I think it's going to be fines. And I think it's going to be ordering people to appear in front of him for sworn testimony, maybe even Todd Blanche. And so I think Todd Blanche has big problems in Judge Sullivan's courtrooms. That's with the Epstein scandal. On the Tate side of the equation, again, just note this. I need to talk about 2 child sex trafficking rings and their connection to a sitting president. In the Tate scandal, Andrew and Tristan Tate, they that run the Manosphere, the Bro podcast with 10 million subscribers and tens of millions of dollars, maybe $50 million a year of revenue. They were held under house arrest by the Romanians. You know why they were released from house arrest? Because the Trump administration intervened. Because Richard Grenell of the Trump administration, who's now the chair of the Kennedy Center and the attempted Trump Kennedy Center, went to Munich, met with the Romanian foreign minister, and pleaded for the Tates, got them released from house arrest, got their passports back. They're British U.S. citizens. And then when Border Patrol in the U.S. picked them up again and picked up their devices, their phones and their laptops, Lord knows what's on there of incriminating evidence of their conduct of a child sex trafficking ring. The phones were returned. The devices were returned by interference of the White House. A guy named Paul Ingrassia, who Donald Trump wanted to make the head of the special counsel's office, until even the Republicans in Senate said that we cannot do. Paul Gracia ended up lobbying on behalf of the Tate brothers when he worked in the White House, and they got their devices back. And then you have the relationship between the Tate brothers and Barron Tate. Oh, yes. Barron Tate either sees them as a mentor. He's used them for consolation when his father almost got his head blown off in Butler, Pennsylvania, or didn't. He's frequently been connected to the Tate brothers. And that makes you wonder, makes you want to scratch your head, right? Why is Barron Trump, 20 years old and all,
now a billionaire by his father's account. Why is he in relationship with the Tate brothers? Why is he not answering up to how he used the Tate brothers to help his father get elected in 2024 against Kamala Harris, got them to mobilize their 10 million people that are part of their YouTube and other world to get the young voter, the 30 and under voter, to vote for Donald Trump? And now Barron Trump needs to answer for those sins. The House Oversight Committee seriously considering whether to call him in for sworn testimony about his relationship to the Tate brothers. And the relationship to the Tate brothers and the Trump family is not just through Barron, it's through Donald Trump as well. His best friend, now that Jeffrey Epstein is no longer here, is likely a guy named Paolo Zempoli. Paolo Zempoli ran a modeling agency that Donald Trump invested in. Paolo Zempoli introduced Melania and Donald Trump back in the 1980s at, get this, the Kit Kat Club. And Paolo Zempoli was rewarded for his close relationship with Donald Trump, is all his running around and catting around and chasing after young girls together in New York. He's now a special envoy for Donald Trump. Oh, yes. And guess who the Tate brothers were partying with the night before they were picked up in Miami on an extradition warrant? Right. Paolo Zempoli, Donald Trump's best friend. And when they got picked up in Miami, because they likely underestimated the power of an extradition treaty. See, the UK indicted the Tate brothers recently on 59 charges, including about 30 related to pornography and child sex trafficking. And the Tate brothers thought, we can move freely back to the United States. Nobody guided them on the extradition treaty between the U.S. and the UK. I guess they thought that Marco Rubio would intervene as Secretary of State, or somebody in the White House, maybe Richard Grenell, or Donald Trump himself would bail them out. Oh, no. They're going to be extradited. There's a huge hearing in Miami that's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 days. And I don't think, based on the treaty and its application, I don't think the Tate brothers survived that extradition hearing. I think they get in handcuffs and shackles. It gets sent back by the U.S. Marshals to UK to face charges. And that may be the best thing that's ever happened to the victims. Because if it was left to this Department of Justice, led by Todd Blanche and Donald Trump, these two would not see justice and Donald Trump would end up pardoning them. See, right now it doesn't make political sense for Donald Trump to protect those innocent victims or to intercede in the Tate brothers' behalf, because he's got a Epstein problem around his neck. And he doesn't need 2 international child sex trafficking rings at the same time. You see the problem? So they're staying away from the Tate brothers. The Tate brothers are being sacrificed. Normally, Donald Trump would rush to their aid, either cut off all investigations by the Department of Justice and or give them a pardon, which begs another question. Why hasn't Todd Blanche's Department of Justice been investigating the Tate brothers for their connectivity to the United States and this international child sex trafficking ring? He certainly has the power under various laws to conduct an investigation. No investigation whatsoever. Instead, they're using it so that Donald Trump can say, see, I'm tough on child sex traffickers, aren't I? I let the Tate brothers be prosecuted and picked up by our allies in the UK. Nothing to see here with the Epstein scandal or the Epstein survivors. They're just whiny. They're just fill in the blank. They're not survivors at all. You know that's running through Donald Trump's mind. And so as an outlet for his misogyny, as an outlet for his attacks, where does he go? He goes after journalists. He goes after First Amendment providers. He goes against Caitlin Collins, who's an intrepid reporter for CNN, and accuses her of being androgynous or a transvestite or a communist or whatever. I mean, when Donald Trump was at a rally and somebody yelled out in Michigan and somebody yelled out, "You're a pedophile cover-up artist," he said, "Oh, you're a communist." Really? We see how you treat women. We see how you treat female reporters. We see how you treat the underprivileged and disadvantaged in our community. You are a predator cover-up artist using war crimes to cover up for sex crimes. I could have taken a holiday. I could take a vacation with my family. I told my wife I would love to spend all of my time with my 2-year-old daughter and my lovely wife. But my wife is very supportive of what I do for a living, and she knows of the importance. And this is no time to rest. This is no time to give up. This is no time to acquiesce. This is no time to surrender. So if I have to take some time out of a holiday to talk to you directly, to be on the Intersection podcast, to be on the Legal AF podcast, to do my videos, that's the least I can do. And all we ask in return is to support what we do, our independent commentary, our independent journalism. And there's so many different ways to do it. You saw our sponsors. We have the Legal AF YouTube channel, 10 new, 12 new videos every day. That's where I do most of my reporting during the day, along with about a dozen collaborators like the NAACP, the American Civil Liberties Union, Democracy Forward, the attorneys general for the Democrats, all joined together on Legal AF YouTube channel. Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, Court Accountability Action, and those two famous historians, Sid Blumenthal and Sean Wilentz. Then we've got the Legal AF Substack, trying to get us to the top 10 of all law and politics Substacks. With your help, we're going to do it. We're in the top 30. That's another free subscription. Come over there and hit that membership as well. And then finally, the Popok firm. I formed that firm just for our Midas Touch, Legal AF, and Substack community. And with your help and the QR code that's up there, you'll, if you have somebody in your life or you've been injured in an accident due to the negligence of others, God forbid, a catastrophe that's turned your life upside down, could be medical malpractice, could be a civil rights violation, call us. New website, as you'll see, same tireless fighters for you. Join the Popok firm in the fight, and we'll evaluate your case. If you got a case, there's no fee unless we win. I'm glad you're here on the Intersection. Come over to the Intersection on wherever you get your audio podcasts. Hit the button there. Download the audio. That helps. Leave a 5-star review. These are all ways we can join and knit our community together. We got to be together here. So until my next report here or on the Legal AF YouTube channel, shout out to the Midas Mighty, the Legal AFers, and the Intersectionists. This is Michael Popok, reporting from the road. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.